All right, so we'll call the meeting to order. I guess going by the agenda. It's 6:33. Guess we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance now. Glenn, are you
Yes, I have that pledge.
okay? All right.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice
for all.
I guess we'll, even though we took a vote already, we'll do roll call formally.
Andrew McGee,
Here.
Mark Pascarella,
Here.
Philip Snowberger.
Here.
Okay. And first item up is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Or do we have any changes to the agenda?
No, I've posted everything.
Okay.
So
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Okay.
Andrew McGee,
Aye.
Mark Pascarella,
Aye.
Philip Snowberger.
Aye.
All right. And next would be the approval of the June 4th meeting minutes. Did everybody have a chance to take a look at those?
Yeah.
Move to adopt.
I'll second.
All right. Andrew McGee,
Aye.
Mark Pascarella,
Aye.
Philip Snowberger.
Okay. Minutes are approved. Next, we'll move on the agenda. We'll move on public requests to speak on topics that are not related to the two agenda items. Did we receive any requests from the public?
No, I have no public requests to speak or presentations or unfinished business.
Going right through all three. Efficient. Since we still have people here, I'll give an opportunity, one last, if there's anyone who wants to speak on any items that are not currently on the agenda. Message, I guess, Brittany or Glenn. Somebody will unmute you.
I've received no messages.
All right. Thank you, Glenn. All right. Since there's no presentations and no unfinished business, we'll move on to the first item under new business. Public hearing for the first item, docket BZA 20-003-UV, Performance Power Sports of Indiana use variance. Okay. So,
The presenter will just message the host. If they will just message Glenn, we can go ahead and get you unmuted and you can present.
who is that?
Frank, it looks like he's already unmuted.
Okay.
Are we ready to go?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Rob, and Nathan, who's also registered, is sitting next to me. Instead of using two laptops, we decided to use one. And we're here, and we're very excited to be with you. We're excited about coming to Whitestown with Performance Power Sports of Indiana. The company's, real briefly, the company's about 2 years old. It was started by my son, Eric Frank, as a second business to diversify. His primary business is in agriculture. And our primary business is located in Performance Ag, Indiana, which is located at the intersection of I-65 and Highway 28 in Frankfort. So what we want to do is we want to expand. We believe that Whitestown is a thriving, growing community. It allows us to come and support the people of your community and other communities like Zionsville and Central Indiana communities. Ironically, in the last 2 years, our reach is not just to locally. We've had people come by Easy Go Golf Carts or our lawnmowers from Kentucky, Illinois, Southern Michigan. Our farthest north customer from Indiana has been probably Napanee. Our farthest south in the state has probably been Columbus, and our farthest delivery was to Tidy Island, Georgia. So we're excited about the opportunity to come and be a part of your community. We believe that it will be a win-win situation for all parties. And we're basically here to answer any questions or concerns you may have. I probably should review briefly what we sell. We started 2 years ago with one product line, which was EasyGo. We then added a line of lawnmowers called Spartan. They're a zero turning radius lawnmower. They're an amazing lawnmower. Those are the only two products we've sold for 2 years. And everything we're selling is basically a slow moving vehicle. It's nothing that moves fast at all.
I think
This year, we're picking up two other lines. We're picking up a line called an NV neighborhood vehicle, which is basically another golf cart, only instead of being born from a golf cart up, it was born from a UTV down. So it's probably more street ready and safe and reliable than a lot of the carts. In fact, it'll even have rollover protection. The other line that we're picking up is because we're in the ag business and farmers buy a lot of Gators and Polaris and UTVs, we have picked up a line called Intimidator UTV. So we will have 4x4s. That's the only product that will go above 20 miles per hour. And I think primarily those will probably remain located in our Frankfurt location. That's not to say we may not want to have one down in Whitestone to show somebody, but they're big. And our thought process is we want to put as much inventory as possible into a small space. So we want basically just golf carts, being EasyGo, NV, and our Spartan lawnmower. And then Nathan is here. I'm not technical on service. I'm not technical on technical things. So Nathan is here if you have any questions on that side of the business as well. So we're here to answer any questions you have, but we're excited about being able to come to Whitestone as soon as possible.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I forget so staff report is next, or sorry, public comment. Yes.
Yep, staff report.
All right.
Staff recommends the approval of the use variance to allow the golf cart and UTV retail sales within the LB zoning district, as well as to allow outdoor sales and display within the LB zoning classification, within the LB zoning classification based on the below finding of facts and my staff report. The first is the approval of the use variance will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because the proposed variance does not negatively impact welfare and safety of community, and similar uses are allowed within the district. Second, because the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because the variance will not change the nature and character of the property or proposed area. This area is already designed for local business and retail sales. Third, the need for variance does arise from some condition particular to the property involved. The size, shape, and location of the property is such that the retail sale is the appropriate use and golf cart and UTV retail sale is appropriate. Fourth, the strict application of the terms of the rezoning ordinance will result in unusual and unnecessary hardship as applied to the property for which the variances are sought because similar uses are allowed within the area. The UDO does not specifically list out the golf cart and UTVs as an allowable retail sales. Without this variance, businesses will not be able to locate within Whitestone. And lastly, the approval does not interfere substantially with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan considers this area to be for retail sales with similar uses. It's simply a matter that the UDO does not currently allow golf cart and UTV retail sales, but that use is consistent within the comprehensive plan.
Okay. Is there any public request to speak for or against this item?
I have not received any public requests to speak prior.
Okay. With anybody out in the audience right now, if you would like to speak up regarding this item, either for or against, please message Glenn and he will unmute you.
I've received nobody messaging me.
Okay. All right, then we will close the public hearing. Is there any discussion or questions or from the board?
I've got a couple. Or if Mark wants to go first, he can go ahead.
No, I insist. Go ahead.
Couple things. How's parking going to be handled? Because looking at the rough property boundary on the GIS app, there's that lot's not a very big lot, and kind of concerned about, you're going to have employees parking there as well as customers. And then if people make purchases, then you're going to have people coming in with trailers, loading and unloading and all that stuff too.
In answer to your question, we felt that the parking was adequate. Our concern is that we want the Whitestown parking to remain Whitestown parking. We're not going to have a lot of employees. We're probably having 1 to 2 employees, maybe 3 in a busy time frame, and our employees will probably trade in and trade off on shifts. All of our golf carts have to be built out. So even though we order in semi-lot, truckload lots, no semis will be coming to Whitestown. They'll all be coming to Frankfurt built out, and they'll be trailered down. And that would be simply us pulling into the back alley and unloading a cart or 2. So we believe that the parking is adequate. I think what's most important is that we respect the boundary between the small strip that we have to display on and the city's property, which needs to be maintained as a public parking facility. So we don't think it's going to be a problem at all.
And then I guess kind of one other question, and this may be more for Brittany, because I noticed the zoning for local business doesn't, in this particular situation, doesn't permit auto, motorcycle, boat, or light truck sales or rentals. Is this gonna, by doing this, is this gonna possibly open up any issues down the road where somebody could come and say, well, you did it here, why can't we do it there? And that.
Yes, I understand your question. I don't foresee this. I know the question has come up before, that exact same one for other things that we have allowed. This is not a specific use, as well as I think for, automobile sales as well as boat sales, light trucks, those are going to need that's going to need outdoor space. That's going to need, there's going to be a lot more customers, a lot more. I think the day-to-day operations are going to be a lot more busy, as well as something like that would most likely have to find a brand new location, whereas this is an existing building. There's already a business being ran out of this building. It's not going to generate a lot of traffic. It's not going to generate a huge customer base. They're not going to have to do tons of alterations and modifications for this. So a smaller sales, such as something like golf carts or ATVs, where it's not, all the sales is not going to be located on the lot. As Rob was saying, we don't believe that this is going to necessarily set a precedence for something like that.
And then I guess one other follow-up is there going to have to be, because I know the UDO requires, like, if multiple parties are going to use a lot, that there needs to be a more or less kind of written agreement between the parties. Is there going to be anything that's going to be in writing between, say, the town of Whitestown and this business, if that lot does end up getting used for that business, for the business and not for, does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. So I mean, at this time, I'm not aware. I'm not for sure. I mean, since there's, private and publicly owned spaces, I don't believe at this time we do have an agreement. I know that with the property owner before we just kind of had an agreement and understanding. And I assume that's going to be the same type of thing, that we will, if there is an issue that arises or something happens, that we will reach out and speak with the property owner and the business owner.
Okay. That's all I had for right now.
The business that's in there now, are they just moving?
The building is vacant at this time.
Okay.
I got a follow-up quick. Oh, sorry.
I'll say, the only other question I had is, I'm hearing that you don't need a lot of space outdoor for parking because you don't anticipate very much. So the golf carts, are they going to be all lined up outside, or as you said, it's more customized? So there'll be a couple there that people could look at, but then the customization starts. So you're not going to be filling it with golf carts or lawnmowers.
Our goal is to fill the building with golf carts, especially because we want to have an advantage of being able to be inside for February, March, April, which the product starts selling then, but the weather stinks, so we want to be inside. However, it's very common for most power sports dealers when spring comes, it's not uncommon for them to want to put their products outside in a line and display them. So it's not going to, like I said, we're not going to take over your parking lot, but the narrow strip that's there is adequate so that we could put several golf carts or lawnmowers along the line of our building. The other thing is these are all going to be brand new products. They're all coming directly from the factory and being built out. So it's not like we're putting old used golf carts out there or old used lawnmowers. It's basically new. So, and in my submission, I tried to go out of my way to clarify that we need to respect the boundary of the parking lot. Because I think it would be very easy for somebody to get carried away and override that. And we just have to realize that as a tenant there, we can't do that. And we're very pleased with our landlord. He's already done a body wrap for us. I mean, it's nice that ProGraphics is so close to us because that's going to be an advantage to us to do body wraps on carts and customize things for people. It's ideal because you got a cafe across the street. We have to go 8 miles to get a hamburger in Frankfurt. And it's nice you have a convenience store across the street. So we realize we need to be good neighbors. Our goal is to come and be good neighbors. And we simply want this to be a cornerstone of a foundation to build into something bigger and better within Whitestown. You know, I'd love it if we could be as big as a car dealer, but we don't have that kind of volume. We don't have that kind of profitability. And about the only thing we have in common is that we have 4 wheels. So, but we fully expect to be a good neighbor and adhere to the rules and regulations set upon us, as long as they're not restrictive in nature.
Yeah, and I guess that was just my question. So the outdoor sales and displays is really, that's the variance you need because you are gonna have some out there, but you're not planning on flooding the whole parking lot with them.
No, we would probably have 2 to 3 golf carts and a lawnmower outside.
Oh, that's it at a time, just 2 to 3.
Yeah. We're not going to have a whole line of them along the building or anything.
And I assume at
Not a lot
close
of
of, I assume at close of business, you'd probably move them inside or,
Exactly. Yep. So they don't get stolen.
okay.
They're pretty easy to
We
get
have to
stolen.
worry about theft. The last person that stole a golf cart, the kids parked it so many miles down the road in the driveway of a Purdue University police officer. So, and those are things we have to worry about as well. So, you know, theft and vandalism is something that we worry about, but we're very confident that we're going to be doing, it's going to be great for us to come to your community.
Okay.
I don't have any other questions, Andrew.
All right. Mark?
No, I don't. Thank you for taking the time to answer.
Thank you very much.
Andrew, if I could, just a matter of mechanics. For those of you who haven't met, my name's John Hughes. I'm an attorney at Bose, and I'm happy to be here with you. Just as a matter of mechanics, on a use variance, the statute says we have to adopt in writing. Obviously, it makes it a little bit difficult when we're here, but we have a written staff report. So if you want to accept the staff report, I would have a motion just to accept the staff report findings as your findings, and that would be sufficient. If you want to modify those, you can. If you want to reject that and vote against it, then we just have to draft up our findings at a later date, which we can do. So just mechanically, a motion to approve or not, and then we'll just need to decide about what we want to do with the findings.
Okay. Thank you, Jonathan.
You're welcome.
I'll make a motion to accept the staff report BZA 20-003-UV as presented.
I'll second.
All right.
Okay, Andrew McGee,
Aye.
Mark Pascarella,
Aye.
Philip Snowberger,
Aye.
Look forward to it.
Yes, thank you.
Community.
All right. Okay, so Jonathan, we handled it there by accepting the findings. We don't have to say we approve.
That's
Okay.
yeah, correct. The findings being accepted, those will be our written findings. With no one here objecting to it, I'm not terribly concerned about somebody appealing, but just
Okay.
a process we can get into in case it happens for a more contentious one in the future.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. Next item then, docket BZA 20-004-UV, SCP MS multifamily use variance.
Good evening.
We have the presenter.
Brian, do you need me to go ahead and share my screen for you?
Thank you very much, Brittany. Can you all hear us?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Yeah. If you
Glenn,
got-
can I share my screen, please?
Thank you. I can start, or I'll just introduce ourselves.
Yeah, that works, Brian.
Thanks, Brittany. Mr. President, I'm Brian Toohey. My address is 50 South Meridian. Here with me tonight is Will Zink of Strategic Capital, the proposed developer of this development, Brian Sheward, an engineer with Kimley Horn, and Liam Sawyer, an engineer with Kimley Horn. Thank you for hearing our case and hosting this in these sort of extraordinary times we all find ourselves in. This is a case involving a request for a variance of use at a site at 5875 Perryworth Road. And the site is about 10.60 acres. It's just on the east side of Perryworth Road, east of I-65. It's the MS radio station site where all those giant towers are. And if I could ask Brittany or whoever when they can, if you'll pull up.
Yeah, I was going to say Brittany, sorry, Brian. If you'd like, Brittany, I could probably share my screen. I could pull it up possibly.
I've got it. I'm just waiting on Glenn to have me share my screen.
Oh, okay. That's fine. I was going to say, I know.
Brittany, I'll be honest, I don't know how to have you do that. I thought I did and I don't.
Here, let me try, Brittany, because I knew we did this last time. It worked out pretty well.
We have to have the host allow.
Okay.
Glenn, next to your share screen icon, there should be like a little up arrow. It's like a little carrot.
Yeah.
If you click on that, there should be an option.
Well,
to
that's
allow
for him to share the screen.
Multiple participants. How about that, Brittany? Can you do it?
Yes, I can now. Let me.
Okay.
Let me pull it up.
Sorry, I apologize. I didn't know.
No, this is great. Thank you for trying.
Yeah, got it.
Glenn, I couldn't do it if somebody paid me $1,000. So,
I thought I knew how to do it and I didn't.
yeah, well, I'm admitting I don't. So thank you so much for your effort. So this is great. Here's our site, members of the BZA. It's about 10.2 acres. And you can see where the MS building is in the radio towers. There's I-65 off to the left, which is to the west. Hemlock Drive is north of there, but between our site and Hemlock Drive, there's an assisted living facility under construction right now. Then to the south, as you might know, there's a Bell Tire and a hotel called the Wood Springs Suites Hotel, and there's some multi-family apartments in the Anson development. And then to the east is the Anson Clark neighborhood in Anson. And then to the north, as I mentioned, that assisted living is on the south side of Hemlock Drive. It's called Glasswater Creeks. And then the Redwood Apartments are just to the north of where Hemlock Drive is shown on that exhibit. The surrounding zonings to the north are UB, and to the east is the part of the PUD. To the south is also part of the Anson PUD. And then of course to the west is the interstate. Our site is zone UB, which is urban business. And we need a variance of use to build a Class A multifamily development of about 222 homes. And if you could go to the next slide, Brian, that would be great.
I think she's the one that's right.
Okay, so thanks, Brittany. So that view is sort of looking south, southeast. There's that, at the far right of that photograph is the Wood Spring Hotel. And then to the left of that is the Anson multifamily. You can see those tall communication structures. Then sort of in the center of the photograph, you can see there's a pretty good stand of trees. And then beyond that is the Clark and Anson residential neighborhood. Next slide, please. So that's looking straight east from 65. That's the Emmis building. Next slide, please. That's looking north from the parking lot of the Wood Spring Hotel Suites. Next slide, please. So that's our southern bordering use. That's the multifamily that we would propose to build something very similar to on the 10.2 acres. So we'll have a 3-story multifamily use in the 10-acre site that I showed you at the beginning of the presentation. Next slide, please. So if you can now visualize what we just looked at from the aerial, this is what we would propose to build. 65 is off to the left-hand side of that diagram. And that Hemlock Drive extension, which is in about the center of that, that's a key part of this development, members of the BZA. That road will come down, Hemlock Road will come down and extend from New Hope Boulevard or Hemlock Drive all the way back to Perryworth Road. And so our development will front on this new Hemlock Drive extension. And you can see there are 3 buildings. There's one up there in the sort of center right. That's proposed building 1. Then you drop down, you see proposed building 2 on the left-hand side. And then proposed building 3 is at the south end next to what will be a detention pond. And then in the center of the site will be an amenity building, which will have a pool, a gymnasium, coffee bar, a business center, the kind of amenities you would expect for a Class A multifamily residential development, rather high-end market rents. Next slide, please. So this is just the narrative. It lays out in sort of a summary form that the site is zoned UB. We are asking for a variance to allow us to develop a 3-building, 222-unit multifamily development on the 10 acres with the amenity center and access drives. And we'll have, of course, municipal utilities serving this area, and we have adequate parking for our development. I'll get to the reason we need a variance in the next couple slides. Next slide, please. So members of the BZA, back in 2018, this site was zoned I-1, which was a light industrial site. And they rezoned this site and some other surrounding land to UB. In that time frame, that is back in 2018, and really until September of this year, so within the last, 60, 75 days, this site with that UB zoning allowed for a multifamily residential development like we are proposing. But when the new UDO, the new zoning ordinance was adopted, in the urban business zoning classification, multifamily was not a specifically permitted use. It wasn't a prohibited use, but it wasn't a specifically permitted use. And when that came to light, then that's when, after meeting with the planning department, the notion came that we would ask for a variance of use to allow this use. Next slide, please. So you can see back before September 2020, this was your zoning ordinance. You can see a permitted use up in the urban business, go over to the right, dwelling multifamily. And so when these folks entered into their contract to acquire this land and start working on it, dwelling multifamily was a permitted, specifically permitted use in the UB zoning. Next slide, please. But then when the new UDO was passed in September 20, if you look what the residential uses that are permitted in the urban business classification, it lists you can have a special exception with assisted living, which is going to be just north of us. Fraternities and sororities are not permitted. Group residential facilities are not permitted, and nursing home and hospice care is not permitted. But live work uses, they have a permitted, but they're subject to limited use limitations on the use. My point about that is that's why we're here before you this evening, is because until September of 2020, this use was a specifically permitted use in the urban business zoning classification. And now it's not a specifically permitted use. Again, it's not a prohibited use, but it's not specifically permitted. And so we're here seeking a variance of use to allow for this development to occur. Next slide, please. And so this is just showing the future road network. And right in the center in the red, you can see where Hemlock Drive. So as part of the development of this site, which again is right below that purple box, which is the assisted living facility that's being constructed now. But as part of the development of our site, Hemlock Drive will be installed. And so we fully expect, and our traffic analysis confirms this, we fully expect that most of the traffic from our site will just get onto Hemlock Drive and head southwest to Perryworth Boulevard and then on to wherever the folks are going. Next slide, please. And we had a traffic study done by Kimley Horn. They analyzed the traffic that would be generated from this development. And you can see down in the bottom, it says the new trips generated by the multifamily development are expected to only use Perryworth Road as it's the most convenient option, which is true. Now, sure, people could go north on Hemlock. That's not prohibited. But if they're heading to Whitestown for shopping, they're heading up to Lebanon, they're trying to get to the interstate, it just makes sense. They're going to jump on Hemlock and get to Perryworth because that's a very short commute. And in sum, what the traffic analysis revealed was that this development would not cause a significant impact on area traffic operation. And I think that even goes out to 2025 build out conditions. Next slide, please. So in a variance, as you just went through in your last case, there's standards for evaluations. It's very similar to findings of fact. We don't believe that this would be injurious to the public health and safety and morals of the welfare, because this was an approved use under the previous UDO all the way up until September of this year. We do not believe the use and value of the area adjacent to the property we don't believe that'll be affected in an adverse manner, because we're between an assisted living development to the north, and then to the south, there's hotels and other multifamily developments. And those have not had any adverse impact on property values in that area. In fact, property values in that area are tending to increase. This will represent a capital investment of several $1 million. So in both the building and in those roadway and other infrastructure improvements, we think that adds value to the areas around the property. This is one of those use variances where there really is a peculiar condition to the property involved, and that is that it was an allowable use under the prior zoning ordinance, and it was allowable when it was first brought to the attention of the planning staff. Then the ordinance changed, and now we need to seek a variance to have that. It would certainly constitute an unnecessary hardship if applied to the property, because it doesn't list this use as a permitted use, and we'd have to go and rezone the site, even though as recently as 75 days ago or 60 days ago, it was a permitted use. So we think the strict application does constitute an unnecessary hardship, and it does not interfere substantially with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan identifies this use, this area to be used for commercial use, and which under the site's zoning, urban business, it is a commercial use, and that did allow multifamily use. And it's surrounded on two sides by multifamily uses. So we don't think it interferes with the comprehensive plan, and I think staff agrees with that. Next slide, please. So staff recommends approval. They look at the same criteria. They believe that the approval will not be injurious to the health and safety and morals of the community. They believe that the use and value of the area will not be affected in a negative manner. And they believe that this application, the strict application of the zoning ordinance will result in an unusual and unnecessary hardship. And I think the last slide, please. So with that, members of the BZA, again, thank you for hearing our case this evening. This use was a permitted use on the site prior to the adoption of the new UDO. It's complementary, and we think it's compatible with the surrounding multifamily and single family use, which are some distance away from us. We think that the standards of evaluation, the criteria, support the granting of this variance of use. And lastly, but not least, of course, the planning staff recommends approval of this variance. We will try and answer any questions you might have, and thank you again for your time this evening.
All right, thank you. Brittany, staff report.
Yes, and I will just note to Brian Toohey and his team for the staff recommendation. I did just add two. I have two new finding of facts under there that just are about the comprehensive plan and the property that I will go ahead and read now. Staff recommends approval of the use variance to allow multifamily within the urban business zoning classification based on the finding of facts. The approval of the use variance will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because the proposed use was previously an approved use under the Whitestown Unified Development Ordinance. This zoning classification is designed to address the needs of a downtown environment, which includes a mixture of residential as well as commercial and retail uses. The use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because it will not change the character of the zoned area or negatively impact the abutting property owners. The proposed development will represent a capital investment in building and infrastructure improvements to the site. Such investments will add value to the area adjacent to the property. The need for the variance does arise from some condition peculiar to the property involved. The size, shape, and location of the property is such that multifamily use within the urban business classification is appropriate. In addition, at the time the property was purchased and development plans made and approved by the Plan Commission, the urban business classification allowed the use. Whitestown recently amended the urban business classification to no longer allow the proposed use, but that was after the property was acquired. Plans had been made and plans for the approved multifamily use. The strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in unusual and unnecessary hardship as applied to the property for which the variance are sought because the site was initially rezoned urban business under the prior UDO due to allowing multifamily. With this new UDO being adopted as recently as 60 days ago, the new UDO and its application to the site would constitute an unnecessary hardship to petitioners' proposed use and development of the site. And finally, the approval does not interfere substantially with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan anticipated multifamily use within this area.
Okay. Thank you, Brittany. So we'll open the hearing up for public comment for or against this item. Brittany, did you receive any requests to speak?
I have not received any emails or requests to speak. Glenn, did you receive any messages?
I have received no messages to speak.
Okay.
If there's anybody who would like to speak now for or against this item, please message Glenn. He will unmute you.
No messages are sent to me.
Okay. All right, we'll close the public hearing then. Is there questions from the board? And Mark, I think you might have muted yourself. Glenn, you might have to unmute him.
Mark?
Yeah, I will, I mean, I guess not so much for questions. Well, one question I guess that I've had, and I talked to Brittany about this beforehand, but we still have control over standards. So the fact that we're approving this does not in any way, shape or form allow us not to be able to have oversight. So I think that that's a question that I want to answer. And I just want to state that for the board since I'd asked that question to Brittany and she'd give me the answer. And my only other comment is, I guess, you know, reading through this, with the idea that the land was purchased and it was allowable at that time, it seems like this was a good variance to have based on what has happened to make sure that the structure and the land that was purchased is done what it should have been done and also fits in within the strategic plan that's already been approved. So that's my only comment.
If you want to go ahead, Philip, go ahead. Or
Just a couple things, and this kind of goes back to one that I mentioned at the first meeting or the first agenda item. I almost feel like doing this because I understand and I'm sympathetic to the fact that the UDO has changed and what was once permitted is now not necessarily permitted. It kind of falls into a gray area because it's not specifically addressed in there. But what would stop this from setting a bad precedent? You know, say that a restaurant, which is permitted in a business classification, wants to locate in a residential area where a restaurant is not addressed in the residential portion of the UDO. You know, in that situation, I know it's kind of a hypothetical, but I feel like that's kind of applicable here, if that makes sense. I just have some concern because I guess the way I understand the UDO is once the new one takes place, that now becomes the governing document. And what was previously stated in the previous UDO really doesn't have much of a bearing as we sit today. So that's one of my concerns. And I don't know if you want me to go through the rest of them or whether we want to talk about this one first or not.
Kind of address that if you would like me to go ahead.
Sure.
So I kind of had a conversation with another member that kind of asked a little bit about this. So the previous UDO that we had, first off, that was adopted, that became, I believe it went into effect in 2015. However, most of that was adopted by county. One of the things in that is, if you remember from the presentation that Brian had, for the uses for each district, it was very specific. I recall one of the uses for it listed in the urban business was, you know, a dressmaker or a florist. So with this new UDO, the goal was kind of to have for some of these business zoning classifications was instead of having more directly specific things like a florist or a dressmaker, to kind of group it into more of classifications of types of businesses that are allowed. And when we did this, when we had our old UDO compared to our new UDO, you'll notice a difference in more of the groups of classifications. So we took general business, local business, urban business, and kind of have that separation between some of the residential, because we do have a new zoning classification that does combine them. However, there are some special exceptions to combine and allow multifamily or a general business use within some type of residential. I don't believe that this necessarily sets a precedence for this. Each case that comes in front of you guys or Plan Commission or anything else is a case-by-case basis. With this one, this is the only urban business zoning that we have right now within the within Whitestown. So it's the only zoning classification for urban business or general business. But for this one, I don't think it's going to necessarily set a precedence. But like I said, everything that we get before you guys is kind of a case-by-case. Staff heavily reviews it. And then it, like I said, for a special exception, not only does it go through BZA, but before a development or concept plan, that does have to go through for Plan Commission too. So, and they have to prove with each one with a finding of facts. They have to prove why this would be set them apart, or why this they need the variance for this specific property or this specific use.
The other thing I would add, just legally, I mean, obviously up to you as a board, how you want to handle this, and that's certainly your prerogative. One of the things under the variance uses, and it's just a question you came up before, Philip, so I think it applies here too. The standard for a variance is a heightened standard for use than it is from development standards, and one of the things you have to show is a peculiarity of the property, and that's kind of it can be a difficult thing to show. Is this property such, it's not likely we're going to find another property where they had already started development and already started plans to do something that was permitted and then the use was changed. Otherwise, I think everything you've said about the UDO is correct. That doesn't mean you have to agree with that finding. You can say, hey, I don't like that idea. But that's legally, I think it's not going to set a precedent in this particular instance, unless there's another property that Brian Toohey already has lined up to bring with the same exact. He's shaking his head now.
Can I tag along that though? This is only for this specific parcel.
Correct. Only this specific parcel. And a variance is that way. A variance of use is for the very specific application that's before you. And I always struggle just as a lawyer when I look at these things and try to think, is this peculiar? Sometimes it can be hard to analyze a particular property as to why it's peculiar. I think this one fits legally if you agree with those, with the facts that have been presented.
So then going.
Before we get there, Philip, I just wanted to say, I do want the board to recognize, and at least I want to recognize, I do appreciate you bring that up though about setting precedent, because I think that is something that, as we discuss, I could see happening in the future of, well, you did it here, can you do it there? So I'm glad you bring that up, but I would hope that being that the nature of this very board would be, these are one-off basis. And so that we would stay focused on not allowing for precedent. But I'm glad you bring it up because we need to be cognizant of that as we discuss it.
And so to kind of build on this would still require like a concept plan, development plan, all that stuff to go before the plan commission. What's the, I guess, projected timeline on this project?
We think.
I'm sorry, Brian, I wasn't trying to interrupt. I was going to say, they have filed for concept plan already. That was part of the review, but it is contingent upon BZA approval, getting a special exception. And Brian, if you want to continue on your timeline, I apologize.
No, Brittany, they'd much rather hear from you than me, I'm sure of that. The timeline would be approximately, if this all worked out, we would like to start construction sometime mid to late summer of next year. It's probably about a year and a half build out. So ideally, the timeline of this and the road and the future interchange with I-65 would all kind of dovetail together pretty much about the same time. So it's a long way of saying 18 months or so from mid to end of next summer would be a time when we would hope to have residents start to come into the development.
And then I guess one other, or I have a couple others. If you're wanting to stick, or I understand you're wanting to try to use it based on the old UDO, which to my understanding in my research, the max density for multifamily in the previous UDO is 20 units per acre.
Right.
And what's that?
This is all under the new UDO.
Correct. And that's what I'm building to that here. So the maximum density was 20 units per acre previously. And this proposal is 222 units, I believe.
It is.
On a 10.6 acre property. So according to my numbers, that equates out to just shy of 21 units per acre.
I agree with you.
Do we have the ability, if they, to place a restriction on that? I know it's not much, but it's just one of those thoughts that I had.
I think at this point.
Yeah, I mean,
well, I would
possibly.
I would respectfully answer it this way. I think we're still inside the density that is allowed under the new UDO. so we don't exceed that. We are going to have to certainly go through concept plan review. I guess I'm getting back to the question was whether the planning department of the town would still have control over this development. The answer is most certainly, because we have to get permits. Well, we have to get approval of our plans, our final plans, and we have to get a permit to actually start construction. So the town will have the final say on what this will look like, and there's a number of checkpoints along the way. We don't, you're right, we're slightly over the density under the old UDO, but I think we're slightly under the density allowed into the new UDO. This is, I think you're hitting on exactly why this is one of those cases where we variance of use is appropriate, because we're caught in this in between time, actually.
Yeah. And that's kind of like, I wasn't trying to, impose any restrictions, but I was just kind of looking at it as we're kind of comparing a red apple to a green apple type thing. We're almost there, but if we're looking at something that was previously permitted, and then we're trying to kind of make it fit into the new UDO, that was just one of my concerns that I had.
You're sort of saying we're selectively shopping here, is what you're saying.
Not necessarily. I didn't want it to come across that way at all by any means.
No, I'm really not disagreeing with you, but it's why
It's okay, Philip. I noticed the same thing. So.
You're not hearing me mount some terrific argument against what you're saying. Just we're kind of in between. We're below the new, we're above old, and it was a use that was permitted under the old. It's now a use that's not prohibited under the new, but it's not specifically permitted. It's kind of a classic case where a variance of use meets all those criteria. The request meets the criteria.
Yeah.
Is that, my math, that'd be under the old, it'd be 10 less units. It'd be 212 units would be what would be allowed.
I think that's right. I agree with you, Andrew.
I guess one, is that something that we could add? I guess we asked that as
you mean to say
as legal. And then two,
Andrew, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you there, Andrew. Rotating around. Hi. Sorry, continue your thought. I apologize for interrupting.
No, you're all right. What I was to say too, is that something the developer would be amenable to?
I'll let Will speak for that. I think one thing that would be good, frankly, to consider here is this isn't just a apartment project on a 10.6 acre parcel in itself. By the way, Philip, I'm the civil engineer, and Mark as well. And interestingly, was on the BZA there shortly, a few months back. This was an interesting project because Brian alluded to it. In addition to the development of the project, there's also a fairly significant public infrastructure improvements that are going along with this too. The developer is basically paying for the construction cost of the Hemlock Drive extension from New Hope down to Perryworth. The town, and we've been working very closely with Danny Powers on that. It would seem is going to move forward with the project to do an improvement project along Perryworth to widen that in anticipation of the interchange coming. I suspect, and I'll let Will speak to this, the pro forma to make this deal work with all the infrastructure that's coming with it too is quite tight. I think there's significant investment in public infrastructure that will be dedicated over to the town at the end of the day for the net benefit of the area. So I know, I guess I'll let Will speak to that, but I suspect the unit count is an important component to that, given the other investments that are going in to try to make that whole deal work. So I just want to make sure that note was made and understood from the road extension and connection and kind of circulation of the town once this interchange is put in. But that's my only 2 cents there.
Andrew, back on the first part of your question, the law allows you to put reasonable conditions on a variance of use. So you may put a reasonable condition thereon.
So Andrew, would you agree with me that under the old UDO, I think you just gave me the number, it was 212 units. would be allowed. And I think under the new UDO, it's 233 or something like that. So I'm respectively suggesting, could we make a deal at 215 or something? And that way we'd be not quite to what the old UDO was, but that would give Mr. Zink, you know, pretty close to his pro forma, and he wouldn't have to lose 10 units, he'd lose 5 units, something like that.
That's, in terms of legal, that's the board's prerogative. You're allowed to place reasonable conditions thereon. And I would say, given that it's the caught between two from a legal perspective, I would say a condition on the number of units would likely pass the reasonable smell test.
Okay.
I agree. I'm not taking you to court over that. I completely agree with him.
Then make it 6 units.
Yeah.
I'm kidding, Brian. I'm
We're
kidding.
all in the realm of reasonableness here.
Sorry, Philip, I jumped in there on your, you probably had more questions, but I had that same one. So,
okay. You know, part of me, I guess, just kind of, I understand the predicament that it's in. There's a part of me that just wonders partially why this may not be going before the Plan Commission for a rezone, but I also understand both sides of it. So that's probably about all I have right now. I mean, yeah, you can go ahead, Andrew.
all right. If you got another question, go ahead, man.
No, I'm good for right now. It's not saying something might come up after you make your points.
I may make one more, if you guys would indulge me, one more note, I guess, from a pure civil perspective. We don't believe that, and I'm trying to frame this in terms of the number of units. Oftentimes that's the intensity and the number of trips generated may be a component to that, or the site may be on the edge of being underparked, for instance. The way that site plan is laid out has well above, I think it's at about a 1.72 parking spaces per unit ratio. That's quite a bit above the code minimum. So we don't expect that to be an issue. And then with the connection and the number of trips expected, the addition, I guess, and it's obviously it's self-serving, but in my opinion, from an engineering perspective, the additional trips from those number of units we're considering here, I don't think are going to make a large difference in the grand scheme of the impact of the surrounding roads. So I think it is good to understand, both from a parking ratio perspective, I don't think we're pushing the limit, and from a trips generated, I don't think we're really pushing the limit there too. So I'll digress at that, but I thought that might be helpful.
Thank you, Brian. I guess one question, maybe this is for concept and development plan, but living down there, the tree line that currently exists, is that going to be touched at all, or
it stays?
Okay, none of it's coming down.
No.
Okay.
We think it's a terrific amenity.
Okay, good. And then maybe Brittany, this is maybe a clarifying question. Since urban business doesn't address multifamily now, I didn't see in the staff report findings, are we going to hold the development standards then to the new, we're talking about the density right now, but are we going to hold other development standards to the new UDO? Will we have that explicitly? Okay.
Again, Andrew, if you wanted to make that just as part of your motion, I think that's a reasonable condition as well, that I think everybody anticipates is how it's.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. I know there's some like urban business right now under the new UDO.
Right.
Doesn't address multifamily, maximum building height is 75 feet. Whereas multifamily is 50 feet. I just wanted, so.
We understand that.
All right.
That's our understanding.
So Andrew, if based on the two things you said so far, would just be, if you were going to approve this, to be approved subject the findings from the staff report, plus the condition of whatever the number of units is you want to propose, as well as meeting the multifamily building standards under the UDO.
Okay. Thank you, Jonathan. Okay. I don't have any other items. I may have more, but I mean, unless Mark or Philip, you have any others, I'm willing to go ahead and make a motion on this one. Do you gentlemen have any other comments?
I do not.
Okay. Then I would make a motion that, I guess, Jonathan, you can correct my wording if it's not on. We would accept the staff report findings with the additional following items. One being a unit number not to exceed 217 units. There's the 5. But not to exceed 217 units. And then the second condition that all other development standards will be held to the new Whitestown UDO multi-family development standards. I may have used too many words there, but
That's great.
right.
Good motion.
I think you did approved too.
So that would just need a second or
yeah.
not.
I'll second.
All right, Andrew McGee,
aye.
Mark Pascarella,
Aye.
Philip Snowberger,
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Brian.
gentlemen. All right. Moving on to the next item, other business. Approval of the 2021 BZA calendar.
As usual, BZA is going to be at 6:30. It will be the first Thursday of every month. As of right now, I anticipate that January we will probably continue to meet virtual. I will send all the members notifications, as well as you can see it posted on our agenda. If it'll be a Zoom meeting or if we will have that in person. But like I just stated, I anticipate that in January it will be another online virtual meeting. Do any of you guys have any conflict, notice any issues with the calendar for BZA for 2021?
Not that I can see now.
Right, exactly. Right now, I think I'm good.
And I mean, and just a reminder, we only have these meetings if there's a request for a variance. So.
Well,
right.
yeah, or if there's any submittals, yes.
Because I think we had how many this year? 4?
Or only 4, and I don't even think all of them. I think there was one actually that we had that pulled, so.
Okay.
Brittany, is there anything on for January yet that you know of?
Today was submittal day. I don't believe we received any submittals, so.
Okay.
I think we're good.
So you're saying January probably will get canceled.
Probably, yeah. And I mean, for that, normally, we know ahead of time. We'll know obviously a month in advance if we get any submittals. But yeah, and sometimes it could be sooner than that. I haven't heard of any upcoming projects or anything that will need a special exception or variance. But as of now, I did not receive anything for January, so we should not be meeting then.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion? And looks like we need approval.
Yes.
All right.
So move.
Is there a second? I'll second it.
I'll
Fine.
second.
All right.
Alrighty, Andrew McGee,
Aye.
Mark Pascarella,
Aye.
Philip Snowberger.
Aye.
All right. Do you have any other announcements, Brittany?
I do not. Like I mentioned, hopefully we will be getting another member, or I believe we need 2 more members So hopefully council will have an appointment December. So we'll see. I hope so. Make it a
Okay.
little easier on you guys.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
All right.
All right.
All right. Thank
Thank
you,
you,
everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Good night.